So today we're going to be talking about overcoming overwhelm. So the reason why this is called overcoming overwhelm and not eliminating overwhelm is because the first thing to acknowledge about is it's an emotion that everybody feels. No matter how skilled you are, no matter how long you've been in this business, there are always going to be times, there's always going to be experiences where you feel overwhelmed. I'm going to mute everybody too here. Now, the idea for this call came up because of some of the conversations I had with branches last week when they were running their manager's office. And I heard somewhat of a trend amongst these branches in saying that they were feeling a little bit overwhelmed. And I get it, especially when it's your first time doing it. Whenever something's new, there's a lot of opportunity for overwhelm to pop up. But today we're going to be talking about strategies and things that you can do in your office, things that you can do even now while you're at school to help limit some of the overwhelm. So that way you can focus on what's important and change that emotion of overwhelm into excitement and more positive emotions that make you feel better. So again, you can't eliminate overwhelm completely. We all have it. It's all an emotion that we feel, but there are definitely opportunities to limit it. So I'm going to share a PowerPoint with you all today that I created. I figured we're going to do some definitions. We're going to do some diving into some concepts. So I thought a PowerPoint might be easy for all of you to follow along here. So can you all see my screen? Yes? Okay, great. Let me see if I can press play and make it easier. Okay, wonderful. So like I said, topic is overcoming overwhelm. So I like to define the words that we're talking about ahead of time because I believe that it gives us an opportunity to really get on the same page here. And oftentimes we hear these words, but we actually don't really know what they mean. So we throw them around thinking they mean one thing, but in reality they mean something else. So what does overwhelm mean? Well, if you look it up in the dictionary, it's actually pretty interesting. It is a verb, although I think in this topic, we use it somewhat of a noun or like a descriptive noun, or I guess it would be an adjective, not good at grammar. Anyways, in the dictionary, it comes up as a verb. There are 4 different definitions for overwhelm: to bury or drown beneath a huge mass, to have a strong emotional effect on, to give too much of a thing to, or to defeat completely. Now, that's really fascinating because the definition that we're going to use for today's call is the emotional feeling of uncertainty and the perceived lack of resources. So while it's not the same as the definition that's online, what's interesting about the definition is that when you are feeling overwhelmed, it can oftentimes feel like you are drowning, or it can oftentimes feel like you're being defeated, or that you just have these strong emotions that you can't really even articulate. And you use the word overwhelm to describe the feeling that you're not sure exactly how to articulate. And the thing about overwhelm is that, again, it is an emotion that we all feel. But the great thing about it is that it is an emotion. So because it's an emotion, we can change it and we can work through it. And there's a saying, I think it's by Tony Robbins, I'm not totally sure, but it's a saying that says motion creates emotion. So we can move through these emotions, and my hope for today is to give you some strategies that help you move through that feeling, so that way it doesn't manifest into stress or anxiety. And when stress and anxiety comes up, that's really where you can start to feel like you're defeated completely. So again, just get on the same page here. What we're talking about today is the emotional feeling of uncertainty and the perceived lack of resources. So I'm curious, for those of you who have felt this feeling of overwhelm, how many times is it because you just like don't know what you don't know what's going on, and you're like starting to freak out a bit that you're not going to be well equipped for the future? If that's how you felt when it comes to overwhelm, that means that you have uncertainty. And uncertainty is normal. It happens to us all the time. But there are ways to create certainty in our life so that that uncertainty doesn't happen. Therefore, you don't feel overwhelmed. So the 2 triggers of this type of overwhelm that will most likely come up running your office are the feeling of uncertainty and the perceived lack of resources. So what we're going to be talking about today is how to create certainty in your life, how to find clarity in your life. And there are two really simple, low-hanging fruit places to start. I love starting with low-hanging fruit because with certainty and clarity, that is a big hole that we can go down of like meditation and journaling and all of these more complex practices, but we're going to focus on things that are super simple and super easy to implement. So in this regard, we're going to start with scheduling, because when it comes to the feeling of uncertainty, one of the easiest places to start is with our schedule. So with my experience working with branch managers, oftentimes when a branch calls me or a new district manager calls me because they're feeling overwhelmed, we'll take a step back and we'll start to think about that feeling. Where is it coming from? And so before we dive into scheduling, I want to give you all a note that I'll emphasize at the end as well. But it's important when you begin to feel that emotion to pause for a second and to ask yourself, where is this emotion coming from? And I would say 9 times out of 10, the emotion's either coming from this feeling of uncertainty or this perceived lack of resources, that you don't have enough skill or enough tools in your tool shed to get the job done. So the first thing to do is to identify what is that trigger, and then you can go to work on that trigger. So let's say that you're feeling overwhelmed because you're looking at your week ahead of you and you're like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. Or you've got all of these things that you know you need to be at or get done, but you've got no idea how to do them or when you're going to do them or what it's even going to be like doing them. Have you ever felt that way? Raise your hand. Before. Yeah, okay, cool. Good. I'm glad we're on the same page here. So we're going to talk about scheduling first and foremost. Now, you've all heard this before, planning ahead, the power of planning ahead. You've heard the phrase before, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. I'm going to show you a sample schedule of like a spring semester for an average college student. What's great about this is it's going to show you just some easy ways to create your schedule, but I want you to know one thing for certain. Your DVM will provide you with a schedule for your summer, which is really great. Now, why is scheduling such a great tool to help you overcome overwhelm? Because it actually creates a lot of freedom. And I've heard people have this kind of backwards where they think a jam-packed schedule is actually really restrictive. But in fact, the reason why it creates so much freedom is because when you have a blank schedule, but you've got a lot of things to do, what ends up happening is you look at your schedule, you look at your to-do list, and there's a disconnect. You start to go over and over in that hamster wheel of your mind of like, well, when are we going to get all of this done? And you spend 30, 40 minutes allowing yourself to spiral and get overwhelmed by your to-do list instead of just putting in the time to get it done. So we talked about this on one of the first calls about how a to-do list, while it is an effective tool to use in getting things done, it's important to recognize that the to-do list itself is the output. It is the intended output. You want to get these things done. What needs to happen before the to-do list is the time. You have to put the time in your schedule to actually accomplish what you have on the to-do list. Are you all following so far? So when you start to look at your to-do list, you can feel overwhelmed if you're not putting the time in your schedule beforehand to actually get things done. So that's why we emphasize so much in Vector the power of monthly scheduling, weekly scheduling, and daily scheduling. So I'm going to show you an example of what a normal college schedule might look like. Give me a second here. Can you all see my Google that's up right now, or is it still in the PowerPoint? It's Google, okay. So I created this schedule. Now I'm going to warn you, this might look overwhelming at first because again, oftentimes when people are new to scheduling, they have this misconception that the more things that are in their schedule, the less freedom that they have. But in reality, when you have the time in your schedule to get things done, you eliminate that 30-minute period beforehand where you're overwhelmed about how you're going to get it done. And rather, you look at your schedule and you say, great, I've got study time in my schedule right now. That's what I should be doing. It eliminates that question. Oh, you're still in PowerPoint. Okay, great. Thank you for letting me know. Hold on one second. All right, now can you guys see the calendar? Yes, okay, great. So again, going back to what I was sharing before, if you're new to creating calendars, this can seem a bit overwhelming at times, but the reason why I'm such a big proponent for it, and I really believe that this is what creates the most amount of freedom in your life, is because it eliminates that question in your mind of what should I be doing right now? So here's a sample calendar. This is very similar to the calendar that I abided by when I was in college. So when I was in college, I took, I think, 18 credits a semester. That's roughly 5 classes. I was a business major. And what they say is that for every class, for every class, you should have about 3 hours of additional study time. So you've got 3 hours of class time, 3 hours of study time. Now, I recognize that some of you might be like bio students or pre-med students, and that could be different, but this is like a generic example. And if you want some help from an individual standpoint, reach out to me and we can do this exercise together. But anyways, here's where it's really effective to get started on scheduling. So whenever you're creating a schedule for yourself, the first thing that you want to do is to put in your non-negotiables. So the things that you absolutely have to be present at and are not able to move. So things like your classes. So when I create this schedule, the first thing I put in here would be my class schedule. So class 1, class 2, then I have a night class on Monday night, class 3, I put in class 5, whatever. Then I have a Tuesday class and I've got 2 Tuesday classes. I'm a color coder. I think it helps me stay organized. You can do whatever you feel like is best, but you can see here that each class is color coded. So I have those things in here. Next, I would put in my vector time because you're all on this call for a reason. You are dedicated and committed to running an effective branch office. Therefore, vector time is non-negotiable. So either if you're a student that's selling around school and you've made a commitment to your manager and a commitment to yourself and your bank account, then you should be putting in demo times. That is a non-negotiable. And then you should also be putting in team meeting times. That is a non-negotiable. So these are the events that the demos can be moved, shifted slightly, but the team meeting cannot, right? So you'll see here, you've got in blue all vector related events. So office, team meeting, team night out, 5 to 11 p.m. Wednesday nights. You've got that in there. Then you've got your demo time from 5 to 8. That's in there as well. So once you do your classes, then your vector time, then you also have to take care of your health, right? Now, health can actually be first as well. You can do either or, but these again are non-negotiables. So I would put in my schedule when I'm waking up every morning. And so you'll see here, I put 7:30 a.m. wake up call. Some of you might be cringing right now, but that's the real world. It just is. I wake up every morning between 6 and 7 a.m., sometimes earlier, and 7:30 really isn't that hard. Now, I did put a 30-minute window to give you some snooze, but I would say 7:30 to 8 o'clock wake-up call is a good wake-up call, especially when you've got big goals that you're going after. So I put that in there from Monday through Friday. Now, here's a big tip when it comes to making your schedule. If you're type A like me, this might actually get you really excited looking at a schedule like this, and you might go so ham at making a schedule that you're like, yeah, I can totally wake up at 7 a.m. on a Saturday morning and get after it. But be realistic. Really look at your schedule and be realistic for yourself. If you know that you're the kind of person that wants to go out on a Friday night with your friends, no shame. And if you know you're the kind of person who's going to sleep in until 10 a.m. on Saturday, no shame, put that in. So you'll see here that I have on Saturdays and Sundays, wake up at 10 a.m. Then it's also important for me that I prioritize my health. So it's important that you also ask yourself, like, what are some of my health-related priorities? Some of you it might be gym, others it might be meditation. Maybe there's a yoga class that you like to go to, maybe you like to go running outside. But either way, you should ask yourself, what rejuvenates me and gives me natural energy? And you should be putting that in there as a non-negotiable. And this is incredibly important even when you're running a branch office, because oftentimes that's the one thing that should be the most non-negotiable, but we put off because we're like, well, I'd rather have an extra 45 minutes of sleep than get to the gym. But if that's important for you, put it in your schedule. Same thing with Bible study. If you're somebody who's really closely connected to God and you really value your relationship with Him, and that is an important and valuable part of your life, that is a non-negotiable. So you put that in your schedule. So those are where you start. I would also include your lunch and your dinner and your breakfast. And I didn't put breakfast in here because for me, my breakfast is a protein shake. I'm out the door. But if you are someone who likes to sit down and have breakfast, account for that. And so I would put in there as a non-negotiable your breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Remind yourself to eat. That's a really important habit to get into. And as you'll notice, while this would be like a typical spring schedule, a lot of these things will carry over into your summer. Instead of classes, though, it'll be interviews and training. Instead of study time, it'll be PCs, PDI, that kind of thing. Now, after you put in all of your non-negotiables, you'll also see social media jumpstarts on here as well. Just a 30-minute-a-day activity, or it could be 2 15-minute-a-day activities. But just putting in there and getting in that habit of doing it is going to be really, really beneficial for you as you open up your office and you have all these different applicants ready to come in for interviews. So doing things now that might be a little annoying will set you up for success come summertime. And by the way, those 30 minutes of social media jumpstart could literally be as you are laying in bed, getting out of bed, or as you are walking to a dining hall, or as you're walking to your class, or as you are on the bathroom or in the bathroom. I don't care what you do, where you do it, as long as you get it done. So it's, again, important that you're putting those things in. So after you put in your non-negotiables, then you ask yourself, what additional time is associated with accomplishing these non-negotiables to the degree of excellence that I want? Okay? So again, being realistic here is really important. So if you are somebody who is a full-time student, but also a full-time sales rep, and you've got a goal of being the #1 All-American scholarship, then this schedule would need to be a little bit different for you, because this schedule right now, as you can see, there are time for demo time and demo time right here on Monday and Thursday. Well, if you're looking to win a scholarship, you're gonna need to put more demo time in. But what you'll notice is that in green, you will see all of these study hours, study and homework. So that's the second thing you put in after you put in your non-negotiables, is you look at your class schedule. Okay, how much time do I need to study for these classes? So you put that in next. Then, of course, you also think about your vector responsibilities. So if you're doing demos around classes, then you have to obviously put in phone time. You know that you're going to have phone time at the team meeting, but you should also put in additional phone time. You should also be putting in grocery shopping. If you're somebody who's on like a health kick and you don't use a dining hall, that should also be in your schedule. And then in addition, you should be thinking about when you're going to be scheduling for the next week. That's also time that you need for yourself to look at what's on your to-do list, because is it true that some weeks you might need to study more than others? Yeah. Is it true that some weeks you might not need to study as much as others, and therefore you can either replace that with more demos or hanging out with friends or doing more vector work? Yeah, for sure. So by making sure that every single week you put in at least an hour of time to go over your schedule and make necessary adjustments, you'll be able to stay on top of that. Is this helpful for all of you so far? Okay, I want to take a quick pause before I go into the next section. Is there any questions so far? If at any point you have a question, just type it in the chat box and I'll make sure to get to it. Okay, so after you've taken care of the non-negotiables and you've taken care of the time associated with the non-negotiables, well, then you begin to add in things that are nice to have. Now, I am an extrovert. And so for me, I need human contact. Some people are introverts and they don't need that. So in my mind, human contact, like hanging out with friends or doing a workout class or spending time with my family, those are non-negotiables. Now, I realize that there are going to be certain times of the year where I can't put as much time into that as I would like to because I have to make sacrifices. But for me, those kinds of things are non-negotiables. But again, I'm going to work with my schedule that I'm currently doing to figure out when is the best time to spend time with my friends and family. So you'll see on the schedule that I have on Friday from 7 to 10, like that is my non-negotiable friend time. You bet that by Friday at 7, I'm clocked out and with my friends. In addition, Sunday night, I chill, watch some TV, hang out with my friends, and also on Tuesday night from 9 to 11, I'm chilling. So I put those things in to give me some break time because it's important that we have that in our schedule. Otherwise, we will not do it, especially in the summertime when things are crazy. It's important that we recognize that we need rejuvenation, whether it's physical rejuvenation at the gym, edible rejuvenation like with food and water, or societal rejuvenation with friends and family. But those kinds of things are really important to put in your schedule. The last thing that you do is you put in margin. So margin's really important because it allows you to make a split decision based on what your week is currently going like. So for example, you'll see here that I have on Monday from 3 to 4:30, there's margin. There can be demo time, study time, or friend time. It just depends on what's going on. And that's why you had this schedule overview on Sunday to make a decision about what that margin time needs to be based on the week ahead of you. So if you've got 4 exams that week, well, then that margin time should probably be study. If you've got a slow week and you want to make some money, then that margin time should probably be demos. Now, if you've got a slow week, you want to make money, that margin time could be demos, and then this margin time could be friends, or this margin time could be friends. But again, having these margin times allows you to make split decisions based on what's currently happening in your life. All that makes sense? Okay, so what questions do you have about the calendar specifically? I do see a question that came in from Noah about, so that question, Noah, is more so a question about regarding social media jumpstart. So I would go to that group about that.
100%, 100%.
Yeah, Austin Power. Yes, schedule time in your schedule to schedule your schedule. Yeah, exactly. That's a great That's a great quote to remember. Any other questions about the calendar specifically? Did that give some insight as to how to plan, Margot?
I was curious, do you think that it helps? For example, you had Facebook Jumpstart time at the same time, like 5 days a week.
Yes.
Do you think that that is better than having it at like early on one day and later on the other day? Or do you think that, it's...
So for the springtime, because you're not messaging, I think the same time every day is totally appropriate because they're going to accept your friend request whether it happens immediately or they're on their call later or they're on their phone later. In the summertime, there might be some days where you're messaging in the morning, some in the afternoon, and it's a trial and error, right? So you'll kind of figure it out. And what's also great about social media jumpstart is that they're going to be guiding you through that as well.
But as a general concept, like, do you think it's better to have certain things you want to make habitual at the same time on a consistent basis?
Yeah, so if you want to make something habitual, it helps if you're getting into a habit of doing it at the same time. And it just allows you to better structure your day because, for example, my habit of going to the gym is every day right after work. And sure, maybe I'll wake up early one morning and I can't fall back asleep, so I'll go in the morning, and that's fine. But having that habit of going into the gym after work every day just allows me to kind of get into the flow. Okay. Any other questions about the schedule? Okay. So let's move on here back to the PowerPoint. So what we're going to talk about next is prioritizing. So you'll see that, in those margin areas and even in the study areas and even in the vector time areas, while they tell you what to do, sometimes it can be hard in that 2-hour window to figure out exactly what should I be doing. Have you ever had that happen before where you're like, you have to go to the library, but you're like, I don't know what to prioritize. So we're going to be talking about how exactly to prioritize. This is a really awesome tool to use that honestly for me has been pretty life-changing. Oops. Can you all see the PowerPoint? Cool. So we're going to talk about the Eisenhower decision matrix. This is, again, a really valuable tool to get to know because it's going to help you systematically prioritize. And I believe in systems because when you have a system, again, it gives more clarity as opposed to just kind of figuring it out on the whim. A system allows you to just know what to do in the moment. So I would suggest right now for all of you to draw a box just like this. Now, this doesn't have it here, but maybe I can draw it in here. No, I can't. So right above here, can you see this laser pointer right here? Okay, so right above here should say urgent, okay? And then right over here should say not urgent. Along this side should say important. And down here should say not important. So what this allows you to do is you can actually clarify tasks under urgent and important, or not urgent but important, or important but not urgent, or not important and not urgent. And so when you're looking at your to-do list, you can ask yourself, okay, where would I put these things in each of these boxes? So for example, in this first box right here, this would be the urgent and important box. So this is the do first box. This is the eat that frog box. So you might have heard of the book, Eat That Frog. And it basically says, do the biggest and most important thing first. And so as you're looking at your to-do list, put in like, what is the most time-sensitive thing? If you're at the library and you've got an exam in 3 hours and you're like, well, what should I study for? That's probably it, right? If your lease is due on next week and you haven't done anything for it, well, that's urgent and important. That's probably it. So asking yourself, okay, what is the deadline of these things? This also, by the way, helps you stay on top of your deadlines too, which is important. I know there's been times for me when I've been doing this Eisenhower decision matrix and I've been looking at my deadlines and I'm like, oh shoot, that's due tomorrow. And then I save my butt because now I've moved into the do first category and I'm able to get it done. Now let's say you're looking at your to-do list and you put something on there that's definitely important, but it's not urgent. So it could be something like, let's say that you have a Netflix free subscription and it ends at the end of this month and you want to make sure that you cancel it in time. That is important to do because you don't want to keep on getting charged if you don't really need the subscription, but it's not urgent. So that would be in the do later category. Then you have the urgent but not important. Maybe you need to make a doctor's appointment because you're coughing. Maybe at this time of day or this time of the year, it's probably urgent and important, but maybe you need to make a annual checkup appointment. and it needs to be done in the next week before you go off on a vacation. Yeah, that's urgent, but it's not so important that you have to do it. Maybe you can ask your mom, hey, I'm really busy right now. Can you make this doctor's appointment for me? Something to delegate. There are some other tasks that you can delegate. If you're in like a fraternity and there's something that is on your list, but you yourself do not have to do it, delegate it. Then we have over here this final quadrant, the not urgent and not important. These are things that you should just eliminate, or at least do your best to eliminate them. And what's important about this category here is that we as humans like to be busy. And there's this myth about being busy that makes us feel really important. And that we feel like if we're so busy, then that means the world really needs us, and therefore we are indispensable and we are of utmost significance and importance. I know I felt that way before. But sometimes being busy does not mean being productive. And so it's important to recognize certain tasks that maybe you thought were moving the needle forward, but when you actually ask yourself, is this urgent or important? And you're like, you know what, it's not, then eliminate it. So that's why this matrix is so helpful, because it actually asks you the question of, do I have to be the person that does this, or can I delegate this? Or does this even need to be done, or can I just eliminate it altogether? Or do I need to do this as soon as possible? Or can I put this in my schedule for later because it's not that urgent? Any questions about the Eisenhower decision matrix? So I'd love to have a little bit of a discussion here. Thinking about your vector office, what might be a task that would go in the do first category?
I mean, in terms of right now, I mean, social media jumpstart is something that you need to make sure that you're doing every day. So putting social media jumpstart in the do first is definitely something that I focused on doing, and I'm sure everybody else is focused on doing as well.
Yeah.
And then also with leases as well. I know those are coming up. Kyle, I still don't know where my office space is yet, and I know that Kyle's expecting a lot of us to have those done. Very soon. So that's definitely in the do first. And fortunately, I have a call with Mike right after this to really try to nail something down on that. So I'm really excited about that. So those are like my main to do first right now.
Amazing. And you know what, Noah? Mike was actually the person that showed me the Eisenhower decision matrix. So tell him that you learned about that today. AJ, I saw your hand raise.
Yeah, I was gonna go into I guess like in branch, I would assume like making your PR calls and everything there too would be a do first. Running your interviews, running your training, stuff like that.
What about on, let's say, I know everyone has different training schedules, but let's say that your training is on Thursday and Friday.
Mm-hmm.
What phone calls on Wednesday should be in the do first category?
Your confirmation calls.
Yeah, because that's really urgent and that's really important, right? It's right on the back end. You don't have any other days to do it. You can't put it off.
Yeah.
Cool. Does anyone else have anything to add on the do first category? All right, cool. What might be in the do later category for either now in spring training or during the summertime?
I think for right now, finding office furniture. I mean, it is an important thing that needs done, but right now is not the time that it is needed. It will come to a point where it moves into the do first category, but that time is not now for me. It's probably a week
absolutely.
out.
Yep, absolutely. What else?
I have one. This like ranges though on whether you've ran training yet in your office or you haven't, but printing out your training notes or your interview notes, just getting everything prepped so that when you're not going into your first interview or your first training session, you're printing out your notes like the morning of.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what? What's so interesting about that, Sam, is that it is a do later thing right now. But if you don't do it later, it then becomes an urgent, well, it becomes an urgent and important. It could also become an urgent and not important where you want to delegate it. But when you first open up your office, you don't have the help to delegate to. So doing later now is really important. So yes, absolutely. You're totally right about that. By the way, that's an important point that I want to just kind of dig into a little bit more regarding printing out training manuals. So Sam, you're with Paige, right? She was your manager?
Yeah.
Okay, so Paige Weber talked about this on, I think, our last call or the call before last, where she, before the summer started, printed out all of the papers that she would need, like hundreds and hundreds of copies of them. And sure, in the moment, that took her like an entire day to do. She was able to save so much time over the summer because she got it done in that one day. So there are moments where you ask yourself, what can I batch work? As in, what can I get done in one day that will save me so much time later? So even though in that moment, it might feel like you're wasting 12 hours because you've been in Staples waiting for these copies to be made for I don't know how long, in reality, that's actually a really effective method of saving time later. So there are some things regarding your office that can be batch worked. Just something to consider. Okay, what about delegation? Now, I already mentioned one, the Staples copies. Yeah, that can be delegated, but only when you have somebody to delegate to. What could be delegated in a vector office, assuming you have someone of a staff?
One thing I would say is sample kits. Getting
Sure.
sample kits ready.
Yeah, definitely. And that's an easy thing to delegate to too, because there's not much skill involved in doing that. It's just showing them how to get it up, and then they can do it while you're running an interview or training or whatever. So,
I know in our office we send some of the other assistant managers to do like shopping for like foods and whatnot for training. So like while you're preparing for training, you have someone else go get all the supplies they need for training. And then I guess to an extent, PR calls, like you said, I think that takes a little bit more training to delegate to like an assistant manager staff, but potentially.
So yes to most of what you said. Let's talk about the PR calling. So
Okay.
delegating PR calling, when you hear the word delegate, it means taking off of your plate and giving it to somebody else's plate.
Okay.
Delegate PR calls, I would find a team to do it with you to lessen the load that you have. So you're still doing it first because it is urgent and important, and we know that, but you have a team that's doing it with you. So that way you're able to shorten the amount of time you spend doing it, but still be just as effective doing it. Make sense? Cool. Now, maybe you can delegate as the summer goes on, training reminder calls if you have somebody that is really well versed in handling certain objections and can pass the call off to you in a professional manner if someone's trying to cancel training for some reason. But you want to ask yourself that question of like, first time delegating is just really basic things like sample kits, like food shopping, like Staples runs, things like that. But great answers. I really appreciate you bringing that up so that we had a discussion to have. What could be something that might pop up for you that is not urgent and not important, but could be looked at as busy work? Now, this might be a hard question because it can be different for everybody. But think about just your life in general. What are some things that like pop up for you that take up a lot of time, but like were not even necessary?
I think I would say organizing things, and organization is really important. But when I say that, I mean like I wasn't doing it along the way. And
Yeah.
so it's not urgent and not important normally when I pick up this stack of things that I have to organize, usually because it's putting something else off. And so it would be more significant to set up the organization system in advance and actually keep up with it. So it would move it more into that urgent, important category, but it would be a very small task and it would take it out of the eliminate quadrant.
Yep, and it's almost like it's a habit that you get into every morning of like, I'm going to spend 15 minutes in the morning just making sure that everything's organized, or 15 minutes at night before I leave. That way I'm not stuck organizing all day tomorrow, when in reality I should be doing things that are in that urgent and important phase. Great answer. Anything else that pops up for you all?
Kind of stemming off of that, I guess, also just like cleaning, like for me, like, I don't know, if I'm cleaning my house, like I'm putting off something else. I'm like cleaning the ceilings, the fan, like things that you don't really need to. And I guess like in an office, it could be to that extent too, like having it clean for training, but like not cleaning the ceiling or the fans or anything like that.
Right, right. Like, and also it's going back to the system that you mentioned, Margot, it's things like when your training ends, asking everybody to clean up after themselves. You know, just because you're running the training does not mean that you have to clean up after your people. You can say, hey, everyone, I know we had some pizza today. Can you make sure that around your seats are clean? And then just put your chairs up against the wall before you leave, because we have to get prepared for the interview tomorrow. And hey, you can pull out one of your favorite trainees and say, hey, on your way out, would you mind throwing out this trash for me? And you might feel weird about doing that, but they're going to feel like you trust them, even if it's just with the trash. But doing those kinds of things begins that buy-in of like, oh, they want me to do things. They want to give me some responsibility. So those kinds of things. So great. Has this been helpful? This matrix? Okay. Any specific questions about it before we move on to talking about just some important reminders and then the second trigger that we mentioned? No? Okay, cool. All right. Important points to remember. I put this slide in here just so I could like make sure that I emphasize all of these and didn't forget them. Oops. Number one, as I mentioned in the beginning, there is freedom in scheduling, because it limits the overwhelm that you could feel, because you can just look at your schedule and instead of asking yourself, what am I supposed to be doing right now? You look at it and go, oh, okay, I'm good. I know what I'm supposed to be doing. Do a quick Eisenhower matrix, figure it out, and you're good to go. Practice makes perfect. Do I think that tomorrow you're going to make a new schedule and you're going to abide by it to the T? No, not in the slightest. Should you think that of yourself? No, not in the slightest. If this is new for you, give yourself some grace and know that there are going to be shifts and changes that you make for yourself based on what works best for you. If you are a night owl, you can move some things later in the evening because that's when you work best. If you are a morning person, then you can move some things in the morning because that's when you work best. Everybody is different. I know some people who like to go to the gym at 4 a.m. in the morning. And if that's you, then that's you. But practice makes perfect, and know that it's going to be a tried system. And that's why bringing this to you now is going to get you in the habit of really abiding by a system and abiding by prioritizing, so that way you can have more success this summer. Being realistic with your time as well. I've seen people put in their calendars 2 hours of time to do training reminder calls and 30 minutes of time to do PR calling. That's backwards. Training reminder, unless you have a training of like 45 people, training reminder calls should not take that long. So you want to be realistic with the time that you're putting in. That way you can actually give yourself more margin to figure out on the spot what else needs to get done. What we just talked about, being aware of busy things that make you feel productive but aren't actually moving the needle forward. There can be a lot of those things in your office. And I want to make a quick point on this. It is not a badge of honor to leave your office at 1 a.m. in the morning. It is not a badge of honor to pull a 15-hour workday unless unless you have a team meeting that goes until 11:30 at night because it's SC2 and you're working with your alliance and all these other things are happening. But the reality is that you don't need to be at your office very late at night. If you get things done, you prioritize well, and you follow a schedule, you should be able to get home while the sun is still out most nights. But what I find happen is that branches don't have the schedule. They don't abide by the schedule, and they spend the first hour of their day organizing in Overwhelm, where they're wondering what the heck are they supposed to do today, and then they procrastinate, and then they end up spending time at the office until 12 o'clock in the morning. They text their alliance group, guys, I'm just leaving the office now, and somebody else affirms that and is like, yo, dude, you're working so hard. And then you're like, yeah, I'm working so hard. And you're like, well, where's the result? And then you're like, I'm burned out. Rather than just sticking to a schedule and knowing that there's going to be days where you will be at the office late, but most days you shouldn't be, and you shouldn't be looking for that. So be aware of busy things that make you feel productive, that keep you at the office late, that aren't necessary. Again, where can you batch work? So thinking about setting up your office, that should only take you one day. You should not take a week to set up your office. It's one day, hang all the posters up, get all the furniture moved in, and then you're good. Getting all your copies done, one day. Those kinds of things can be time sucks for you in the summertime. Incorporating breaks and rejuvenation. That's why I emphasize so much the importance of asking yourself, what is nourishing for me? And making sure it's in your schedule, because it's when it's not in your schedule, it doesn't get done, especially during branch. And I've had conversations in the past with branch managers who've come to me feeling overwhelmed and feeling like they're off the rocker. And I'm like, well, tell me more. Let's kind of diagnose this problem here. And as I probe and as I dig, I find that their time with God is really important to them. And they haven't opened a Bible all summer. And I'm like, why not? And they're like, well, I haven't had the time to. And I'm like, no. You make the time for things like that. Or I'll talk to somebody and they're feeling really, really sluggish and lethargic and they're just in a bad mood. And they come to find out that in college, they would go to the gym every day and it was like the highlight of their day. And I go, well, when's the last time I went to the gym? April. Go to the gym. Put that in your schedule. I would rather have people doing the important things that nourish them to feel good, to be a good human for your people, than to be pouring from an empty cup. Now, there is a fine line. Should you be going to the gym for 4 hours a day? No. Again, be realistic with your time, but don't neglect the things that nourish you, rejuvenate you, and make you feel good. If family time is in that category, have a family dinner once a week. On that note, this is really also very, very important. I realize that in college, you might be the only one of your friends that has a crazy color-coded schedule and a scheduling book and your alerts on your phone, and your friends might be like, you're crazy. I realize that. But let me tell you something. This is the real world. And my girlfriends, I'm only 26, not that far off from you. My girlfriends legitimately have to schedule in times to hang out months in advance. I have a double date planned for the second week of April because that's just how we operate in today's time. So getting used to scheduling is a really valuable skill that will bleed into success as you get older. On that same note, when your friends don't quite understand that, it's okay. They don't have the same experience that you do. It's not you. It's not your fault. What is important to do, especially if time with friends is valuable, is setting the right standards with them. Hey man, I want to be able to see you. I've got to abide by a schedule because I've got some really big goals I'm going after this summer. can we schedule time on Friday? I know like it sounds crazy, but like that's how I have to operate right now. So can we schedule time on Friday? And ask those kinds of questions. You can make a joke of it if you want to, but legitimately scheduling time is valuable. The final point here is IDing any tasks that create a snowball effect. So this will likely happen for you when you're doing the Eisenhower decision matrix, where you figure out what are some things that really need to get done. And if you're doing the decision matrix and you find there's 5 things in that urgent and important category, ask yourself, are any of these 5 things that if I get this done, that I can cross off other things on my list? So maybe there's something that's urgent and important in quadrant 1, that if you get that done, maybe something that's in quadrant 2 can get moved to the eliminate category. So ask yourself that. That won't always be the case, but sometimes it will be. Okay, perceived lack of resources. So I want to have a group discussion about this in the last 10 minutes that we have here. So I want you to think about what it means to have this perception that there's a lack of resources. So first off, let's define what are resources in the vector world. Well, when I think about resources, I think about things like, honestly, any type of help is a resource. So who are your resources in Vector? You've got Vector Connect, you've got your DVM, you've got your DM, you've got me, you've got TLA, you've got the conferences, you have all of the different worksheets that come from the conferences, you've got your training manuals, you've got Vector Live, you've got all of these different things that are designed to help you. So a perceived lack of resources, what might that mean? I know this might be an ambiguous question, but I would love for someone to try to answer. What might that mean for a branch who doesn't think they have the resources?
Just to add to a little, just to add to that, it could also be I know at Michigan as well, at such a big school, sometimes it's not even the lack, but it's the surplus of resources, and you don't know what to do about them as well.
Sure.
Especially, I know I'm in a situation right now where I'm going to talk to Mike about this in our call in a couple minutes, just about what am I supposed to be doing with all these resources. So that's also something that I'm feeling right now.
That's totally right. You're totally right about that.
I just wanted to throw that out there. But going back to your question about perceived lack of resources, I know that this is also an issue that sales representatives initially have when they create their list of people to call. Perceived lack of resources is not just, it's not, maybe not having the ability, but not wanting to face a challenge.
Mm-hmm.
Not having that drive to lean in, and they create the excuse that it's just a lack of resources.
Yep, so that could be one factor of it. It's not having that drive. It also might be an automatic reflex for people. So sometimes people, when they get in this overwhelmed state and they either have a surplus of resources or they think they have a lack of resources, what they'll tend to do is they'll just shut down. And they're like, I don't know what to do. I just don't know. I can't, I don't know. I don't know. And they act like that. I've been there 100%. I've totally been there. So in that moment of overwhelm, what can be the solution? And Noah, you're doing it right now. The solution is to ask about it. It's to ask questions to gain clarity. So clarity comes from scheduling, certainty comes from scheduling, but clarity and certainty also come from asking questions. When you have a perception, oftentimes that means you have an assumption. And we know what they say about assumptions, right? When you assume, it makes a, right? And so instead of making assumptions, it's actually reaching out to your resources, your team. You've got a team. You've got me. I'm on your team. I'm like a big cheerleader for you. You've got your DM, you've got your DVM, you've got your RM, you've got alliance groups, you've got Vector Connect, you've got a lot. So it's reaching out to somebody and saying, hey, here's where my head's at. What do you think I should do? And in the worksheet that I shared in the Branch Impact group, you will see that there's a journaling question at the end that asks you, who are you going to go to? Because like Noah said, you've got a lot of options. And that itself can be overwhelming. So taking the time now to think through, who am I going to call when I'm feeling overwhelmed, can really be powerful for you. So I encourage you, like I've always encouraged you, to do those worksheets and answer those questions, because they're going to give you some insight as to how to properly prepare for the summer. That is it. That's the call. We're going to end on that note. I want to open up for questions. What questions do you have based on either my experiences I've had coaching branches in the past, things that you heard in the call that you want clarity on? I'm here to answer and help wherever I can.
How do you handle like stress about finances? Like if we're talking about perceived lack of resources, how do you handle that with money?
So it's a great question. And you have, what region are you in, Margot?
Midwest region, Steel City Division.
Okay, great. So you've got about a month and a half until you open up your office. So asking yourself, what amount of money would I need in my bank account to feel comfortable? And then making a plan with Scotty to sell that amount, to sell enough to earn that amount. If you're not able to sell right now, then babysit or do something, be resourceful and find a way to earn that money that would make you feel comfortable. That's why, I mean, that's a great question, Margot. And that's why we always encourage your savings accounts, like building up your savings accounts. We don't want you to drain them. That's not the intention here, but it's just a cushion. It's designed to give you that sense of security that you're going to be okay. Any other questions? I do see some. Oh yeah, Alec, go ahead.
So going back to the schedule, I noticed your schedule was pretty like blocked off. What about like travel time? Because I know that's a big thing for me is I'll make like a really, really good schedule with all the stuff I want to get done and journal in the morning and all that stuff. But then I'll totally forget about travel time and just like little tiny things that kind of set me back like a half an hour, and then it can just kind of snowball my whole day into kind of chaos.
Yep, so let me share my screen with you one more time because I did include some blocks for that. So you'll see here that like in between class, I have 30 minutes.
Gotcha.
30 minutes to walk to and from class, 30 minutes from leaving my apartment to class, gym to at 3. So yeah, maybe we move this down 30 minutes. So if you know that's a common issue for you, well, then the solution would be to incorporate that into your schedule. So incorporating the travel time into your schedule is valuable. That's a really good question because it's true. And also let me say this. It's very similar to like when you're doing any kind of weight loss challenge or whatever it might be. One bad day does not need to throw your entire week off. So one day where like you happen to miss your alarm and wake up late and your schedule's all whack and crazy does not mean that the next day needs to be bad either. It's just as simple as acknowledging that, okay, I didn't incorporate that. I didn't account for that. I'm going to move on to the next day and it's all going to be good. Okay. What else? What other questions can I help you out on? I know AJ asked a question in the group here. Any tips on holding yourself accountable to your schedule? And that's a really great question. And that can be difficult. It can be difficult to create a schedule and then your alarm goes off and you're like, oh, I really don't feel like waking up. That's why I say it's trial and error. But you know, small little hacks that you can do for yourself is setting alarms on your phone so that will ring when it's time for you to go to the library. Also, if you can ask yourself, like, what are the things I'm most likely to put off and do them with somebody else. So for example, if putting off library time is common for you, then text a friend and be like, hey, want to meet at the library tomorrow at 3 p.m. If putting off demo time is common for you, well, here's a good hack. It's making sure that you emphasize the phone jam. Because once you've done the phone jam and you've got the demos scheduled, well, you're not going to just not go. So sometimes there's that hack as well. It's like thinking about what are the specific times ahead of the non-negotiable events that will allow me to kind of force myself to go to those things. Same thing with the gym class. Or going to the gym, making an arrangement to meet a friend there, or setting up for a gym class that you have to go to. Like I think about my gym. If I miss a gym class that I sign up for, I get charged $5. So that's a pretty good motivation to go. What other questions do y'all have?
Do you have any tips for like what is your like before bed routine? Like right before, like 30 minutes before you go to bed, just to get you be able to like up and rolling the minute you wake up in the morning, because I have a problem of like waking up, snooze, and then like scrambling, finding my clothes and stuff. Just do all that the night before. How do you do that?
So I'll be honest with you. I'm not always the best at it, but when I need to be, I can be. And one thing that I did over the summer, so very similar to you guys, the summer for me is crazy because I've got like 6 calls a day with all of you, like branches and all that kind of stuff. So I'm up and out, I'm really early. Something that I did that was really effective in the morning was I would actually plug my phone in my living room. Now, I don't know what your living situation is like, but I would plug my phone in a place where I had to physically get up to turn it off. That allowed me to at least get my body moving so that I didn't immediately fall back asleep. Something else that you can do, so what I would do was I would put my phone in my living room, or it was in my kitchen living room was the same thing. It would go off. It was right next to the coffee machine. I would preload the coffee machine the night before, and then I would press start. And I didn't want to go back to sleep, 1, because I had coffee brewing and the smell was really uplifting. 2, I don't like burnt coffee. So if I didn't wake up, my coffee was going to be burnt. Another thing that I would like to do in a previous apartment was I would set my alarm, and as soon as I got up, I would open up windows in my apartment. And just having that fresh air allowed me to get up. Another thing you can do is as soon as you get up with your alarm is turn your shower on. You don't have to get right in, but you're not going to go back to sleep and let your shower just run. But having that turn on, that's if you shower in the morning. But that's another hack that you can do. Regarding picking out clothes, pick them out the night before. That's an easy option. Does that give you some ideas?
Yep, thank you.
Cool.
Can I add one thing to that?
Yeah, go ahead.
It actually helped me out a ton with getting ready in the morning. Actually, like using a sleep cycle timer. So it tells you, like, depending on when you go to bed, when is going to be the best time to wake up, based on the fact that it takes 14 minutes on average to fall asleep, and a sleep cycle is about 90 minutes.
Is that an app?
Yes, I think it's called Sleep Time or something similar to that. I
Cool.
used it as a website first, but then I downloaded the app and it's really nice.
Nice. Yeah, that's awesome. That's really cool. Again, it's all trial and error, and you'll learn over time like what is your sweet spot in terms of waking up. I also I don't know if you were on the first call, but maybe it was the second call. One of the early calls in January, I talked about like if you're going to wake up early, do it incrementally. So I had somebody tell me that their goal was to wake up at 4 a.m. in the morning. And I go, okay, well, what time to wake up now? And they're like 9. I'm like, okay, well, it's not sustainable for you to all of a sudden just expect that you're going to wake up at 4 a.m. in the morning every morning. So if you want to start waking up earlier, set your alarm clock for 8:30 tomorrow. Do that for a week. Then 8 o'clock. Do that for a week. Then 7:30. Do that for a week. And do it incrementally so it becomes more sustainable and actually becomes a habit as opposed to just like I'm going to wake up tomorrow morning at 4 a.m. and then you're like, F that, no way. when it comes time to wake up. Any other questions? Was this helpful today? All right, cool. Well, I appreciate you all jumping on. We have a really big treat for our next call. We're going to have a DM from the Eastern region. His name is Darren Gardner. He's going to be jumping on. He's won 4 silver cups, and he's changed territories 4 times. So he's had to learn how to start from scratch 4 different times, and he's been in the business now, I think, for 10 or so years. He's going to be sharing his story with everybody on the call. That's going to be on March 31st. So mark your calendars, and we'll all talk then. As always, I am no stranger to any of you. So if you have any questions or want to get some time together, I'm here for you. Just reach out via Facebook or Instagram. Bye, everybody.
Bye. Thank you.
You're
Thank you,
welcome.
Shelby.
See ya.